What's going on, everybody? Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of The Watch Report with me, Jean-Luc Roach. Make some noise, clap it up, get excited, wherever you are. Let everybody know that we got a new episode of The Watch Report live for your viewing and listening pleasure. We got a jam-packed episode for you today, as UFC 286 is tomorrow, this Saturday, and it features on the main event of the card Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards in their trilogy bout for the UFC welterweight title. This is going to be an incredibly exciting fight, and I'm going to give you my opinions and who's going to win the fight all right here on this show. Keep it locked, keep it tuned in. Just a quick reminder, as we always do, so like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts and opinions, and share so we can grow this empire of the Watch Report together. Again, we're on the road to 500. We at 332, and I can't do it without you. Oh yeah, I'm rhyming all the time because I'm like that. Oh boy. But all that promotional stuff aside, it's time to break down this fight. You know what that means. Whenever we talk about a fight, it's time to step into the ring. That's right. Ring the bell. Let's get it started. Round one underway. And the only round of the fight for this section, breaking down the fight in the WSO action. Excuse me, not the only round. We're going to have a plethora, gosh, tongue-tied today, of things that we got to cover on this fight alone. Starting with, what each fighter brings to the table. Well, let's start with the challenger, Kamaru Usman. What he's coming in, we are looking at Kamaru Usman now as a fighter with a renewed hunger. He's always been hungry. But now, we're looking at a fighter who has tasted defeat in the worst way possible. After dominating in a fight that if everything had went as supposed to, he would have won. And so now he's looking for revenge, and he is driven. He is fired up. This brother wants his title back and a shot at the crown, and not just a shot, but to put the crown back on his head and reign supreme again as the king of the welterweight division, and one of the best pound for pound fighters in the entire world. On the flip side, Leon Edwards, the modern day Rocky of the UFC, the man who did one of the biggest upsets that we've seen in UFC history, pulling essentially magic out of his head when everything seemed to be going awry. The chips were down, and he seemed down and out. Of course, not in the literal sense, but in terms of in the grand scheme of the fight, this brother seemed to have no shot of winning. But of course, headshot, boom, happened, and one of the greatest upsets and knockouts in UFC history occurred right before all of our eyes. Not gonna lie, I looked down at my phone for a second and I missed the actual kick. I just heard Joe Rogan and the rest of the commentary staff go, "Oh!" And the next thing I know, boom, the fight's over. Shocked me to kingdom come, but it happened. And now, Leon Edwards is looking to not just retain, but prove that this wasn't a fluke, and prove that he is legitimately about this championship life. This wasn't a one-time deal. This is going to be a consistent show of excellence and a championship reign that will last longer than just a one-time thing. That's what he wants to prove, and that's what each fighter is trying to bring to the table with this fight. Now that we have that out of the way, let's break down some of the concerns in our next round of this show. What are the concerns for each fighter coming into this fight? What is it that can potentially make things go awry for each of these fighters coming into this championship bout? Not bad blood, but competitive blood between the two. And we're going to start off with Kamaru Usman, again, the challenger. And with Kamaru Usman, one of the things that we need to look at with him is he coming back too soon? That's one of the major concerns with Kamaru Usman after his knockout against Leon Edwards, or rather getting knocked out by Leon Edwards with the leg kick. Is he coming back too soon? Is he rushing, potentially, the recovery process from a knockout that's severe and trying to jump into the foyer too quickly, and it potentially backfire on him? Because again, the brother's only lost twice, and I believe the first one was a decision. This one was about a knockout. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Second one was about a knockout, and that knockout was horrible. I'm talking about this man was out like a light, and now not even a year after, he's already back into the fray, already back into the ring. Some people can look at that as rushing the process of fully getting yourself together. And with that, we don't know how that knockout has affected Kamaru Usman. The champion, when they fall, such as somebody, you can lose, sure. When a champion falls, and by falls I mean knocked out, it affects them differently. It really does. Because now you are no longer the invincible fighter in terms of, you're no longer the impenetrable force. You're no longer the stone wall that you had built up your reputation to previously up until this point. Yes, Kamaru Usman had lost, but he hadn't been knocked out. Never been knocked out. He had been beaten, sure, but he hadn't been knocked out yet. And when he did get knocked out, this was a clear-cut sign, or not even a sign, this was a major concern potentially to his psyche that we need to look out for. Because when he steps back into the ring again, is he going to be the same Kamaru Usman mentally up here that he was when he came into the ring as champion? He's still going to be as hungry. He's still going to be as driven. He's still going to be as fiery when the ring bell actually sounds. Once it's time to actually fight, are we going to see the same Kamaru Usman that we saw 20-something fights ago? That we've built up this reputation of understanding and knowing. Now, again, would that be a major concern? I don't think so, due to the fact that, again, how excellent he is at staying not only in shape, but being dedicated to the sport throughout his entire career, regardless of whether the ups or downs have happened. I don't think we're going to see a different Kamaru Usman. If anything, I think we're going to see a better Kamaru Usman. But then, even with that, if the mentality isn't a concern, then will he make the same mistake again? We got to understand, he never been knocked out before, got knocked out, and now Edwards has a bullet in the chamber. Edwards got a shot that he knows, if I do this again, it worked before. Now I have a clear-cut, definitive way that I can end this fight. If all else fails, I got that I can rely on. And Usman can make that same mistake again. It is entirely possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but again, Usman has he's a great striker. Don't get it twisted. We've said this on past episodes, talking about Kamaru Usman as being one of the most complete fighters in all of the UFC. Absolutely. With that, though, comes a heavy boxing background. That's how he likes to strike. But with his boxing background comes things that, while they work in the boxing world, can be detrimental when you cross over into the UFC, or rather when you train with that mentality in the UFC, because as we saw, slipped and brought his hands down trying to parry the punch. What happened? Boom, headshot, bang, like I said at the start of the show. That is a legitimate concern. His fight style, while near impenetrable in terms of from his other opponents, he's been dominant. But there is now a clear-cut chink in the armor. There is now a clear-cut guaranteed victory, or a route to a guaranteed victory that Leon Edwards can take, because it happened before. Will he make that same mistake again? It can happen. We've seen it happen before to other fighters. If not losing in that same way, at least getting caught in the same way that they lost the fight previously. And that can be a real concern for Usman, and that can even lead him overcompensating and further deteriorate his ability to actively be able to fight in the full capacity that we know Usman can fight at, because of the fact of the fear, or at minimum the concern for having that same kick connect again, and may not allow him to fight as freely as we know he can fight, and as loose and as creative and as dominant as we know he can be. And we've seen it before, when fighters get caught, whether it's in boxing or in the UFC, it can change how they approach a fight. It can change how they fight. It can change how they think. It can change their whole style potentially. And with Usman, is that going to be the case? Or will we see the same Kamaru Usman. And even if those two things still don't apply to this fight, if they don't happen, one of the bigger concerns is the fact that he's 35 years old. He is older. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 35 is still young, relatively. But in the fight game, 35 years old, that's normally you're going downhill in terms of your prime athletic peak and your prime ability. Time waits for no man, regardless of how many examples and rare breeds we have all playing, fighting, and competing at the same time across various sports. Despite that, time still always wins. And we don't know when somebody's clock is up for them to be able to compete at the same level in the same way that they are able to compete. Again, it wasn't a concern because Usman had been dominant. Outside that one loss, Usman had been, up until the Leon Edwards fight when he did lose and got knocked out, he had been seen as one of, if not the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. And how long is this ride going to go? Now that he's lost, now that he's got to essentially go back to being a mentality, or go back to a mentality that normally younger fighters have to tap into, which is I'm hungry, I'm driven, and I'm trying to be champ. And in this case, trying to be champ again. Will time allow for him to even be able to fully do the things that he wants to do in the ring? Or excuse me, in the octagon. My apologies. Is that likely to happen? No, but again, time hits people differently. It really does. And sometimes the result of a fight can bring about the acceleration of time. When somebody gets knocked out, that can fast track how their internal clock moves in terms of how rapid their prime falls. Because once that happens, now everything changes with the fighter. Potentially. It's possible. We've seen it happen before. Now, it's a real possibility it can happen with Kamaru Usman. Not saying it will. I'm saying these are concerns to have with Kamaru Usman going into the fight. Then, going into the champion, Leon Edwards, the biggest concern for him in this fight is the fact that in the first two fights that he faced off with Kamaru Usman, he got bullied. He got dominated. First fight, unanimous decision, completely outclassed. Second fight, even with the knockout, he was being bullied. Just like Usman was using as banter and as taunting and to get inside his head when in the press conference that they had for this fight upcoming. Edwards got bullied. Edwards got bullied from pillar to post. Edwards got manhandled from pillar to post. It was a boring fight because Usman was dominating that much. That's the whole reason why I looked down at my phone in the fifth round. Because I thought with 4:04 left and the round about over, there's nothing that Leon Edwards is going to be able to do to actually pull this out. And that's why I looked down for a split second. Because I was like, okay, it's a foregone conclusion. Leon Edwards hasn't won a round, and if he has, he's only won one. And that's it. That is it. Not another one. Hasn't won a round. What was it? Was it round one that Edwards may have won? And outside of that, he didn't win another round up until the knockout. That's what it was. It was that dominant of a performance. And again, previous fight they had was a unanimous decision. And he got manhandled in both affairs. How is he going to keep that from happening again? Because here's the thing about Rocky stories. They're so special because they're rare. They're so special because of the fact that they are not commonplace in the world of sports. Comeback wins are not something that we normally see. So it makes them so exciting. But if you got to rely on that on a consistent basis to win, inevitably, the chips are going to run out for you. Take Charles Oliveira. on a previous episode that we talked with Tien, who came on the show, UFC fan, good friend of mine, absolutely love him. When he came on, and he talked about Charles Oliveira facing Islam Makhachev, one of his biggest things with Oliveira was the fact that he makes every fight exciting. And seemingly, whenever you have him on the ropes, he always finds a way to win whenever he's in trouble, when it seems like everything's going for him. My whole thing was that may be true, and he's a master at being able to pull magic out of his head and come out the fire when he's right in the middle of it, like pure gold. But that is going to run out eventually when somebody doesn't allow for him to take advantage or to take advantage of an opening to escape certain doom. And what happened? Islam beat him. And what can potentially happen with Leon Edwards, if he relies on, okay, if all else feels like I won in the chamber, he's going to run out. That's how I see it. He's got to find a way to make it so that he can be dominant and be able to not just rely on that one shot as the main source of his ability to win this fight. Because if that doesn't happen, shoot, he's going to be out and new is going to be the announcement. Kamaru Usman, now a two-time welterweight champion. That's what will happen. Even bigger than that, mentally in this fight with Leon Edwards, will Leon Edwards be able to withstand the weight of being champion? As a champion, it is very heavy. Heavy as a head that wears the crown, as the saying and or song goes. And it's true. When you got the belt on you, it is a major shift in dynamic and a shift in the atmosphere that you now reserve and you now fly in. And with that shift becomes more pressure. With that shift becomes, or rather with that shift comes more turmoil. With that shift becomes more responsibility. All of that gets laid upon your head. And will you be able to withstand it? Because it's different looking to when you're hungry, when you're looking to eat, when you're looking to, you're starving. And by any means necessary, I got to get there. I got to get there. I got to get to the top. Especially with Leon Edwards, who was overlooked for the majority of his career. A talented fighter who wasn't getting nearly the respect that he deserved up until he actually won the title. Now, all of a sudden, his country's behind him like never before. Even though some may argue that maybe it's not the country being behind him, but rather the country being behind England or London having a champion more than it is him having the support. Which, again, is another thing that Kamaru Usman brought up in that press conference. With all of that, the pressure, the now newfound hunger that now you have to face with challengers that are coming to you, like with Kamaru Usman, who I assume is going to have that fervor and hunger. It's a different stratosphere that you're going up against now. Getting the belt is hard enough. Retaining is a completely different story. Because some people, this may be their one and only opportunity. Desperation like no other. You have experienced that as the challenger if you're Leon Edwards, but you've never faced that. And because of that, that can be a real hard, jarring, and for some people, too much of an experience. It might get too heavy on them. The pressure may be too great. The stress and the responsibility to have to now carry and reign as champion isn't for everybody. People fold when they get to that level. People crumble and fall when they get to that level. Will Edwards crumble and fall? Or will he be able to embrace being champion? And it's an important question to ask and an important concern to have with Leon Edwards because of the fact that Leon Edwards is with where he came from, like I said, from nobody to somebody, and now being a somebody in the eyes of the whole, What happened to um Andy Ruiz once he got the belt? Oh, well, he never fought the same. He let himself go. And I'm not saying Leon Edwards let himself go. No. Made weight, looks healthy, all that stuff. But he let himself go in terms of Andy Ruiz. He let himself go both physically and mentally. He didn't have the drive of still being hungry that he had when he initially won the title, when he was initially coming up. He didn't have the same fervor. He lost that. And with Leon, especially with where he came from, incredible story as champion. But as easy as it is to look at that and say, oh man, this man finally reached his dream, got exactly what he wanted, and achieved everything that he was trying to get. Props to him. Now that you made it out of that hard situation, are you still going to fight like you're in that situation? We saw Conor McGregor lose that same fight, the biggest star in UFC history. We saw him lose that fight. We did. One of the greatest, and formerly, right now, the second greatest fighter of all time, Anderson Silva, at least in the UFC world. We saw him lose it to a degree when he became champion. It wasn't immediate, but we saw it happen. We can go down the list of people that when they got what they were asking for, they let themselves mentally, some physically and mentally, but most mentally, lapse. And because they lapsed, they lost it all. That's what can happen with Leon Edwards. Getting out of a rough situation to the top of the mountain is so easy to slip and fall. Because the top of the mountain, it's a peak. The whole reason why it's a peak is because you can climb up, absolutely. But to stay atop is incredibly hard. Because you got all this surface area. You got all this stuff that you can reach and grab onto when you're moving up. Oh yeah, I'm going to make it. I'm going to get there. Oh yeah. You got rocks, trees, whatever the word you want to use as things for leverage to propel you to where you want to go. At the base of a mountain, moving up. But to get to that top, it is a point, small, minute point that you got to balance yourself on top of in order to say, I've reached the peak. And then to stay at the peak is incredibly hard as well. Because not only do you have other people trying to pull you off, but that change in atmosphere, now that you're at the highest of highs, it's harder to breathe. You ain't getting as much oxygen. You get dizzy, lightheaded. Winds are different up there because there's no more, how do we say, there's no resistance from trees, rocks, or otherwise. And so now you can be blown off. You can be pushed, or you can be blown away by the wind off the mountain. You can be pulled down by other people trying to reach the peak, and they can throw you down the mountain. And because you're at the highest of elevations, the pressure, the air pressure is different. It hits you different. Now you got to adapt and adjust to that. All of that is what people don't see when they become champion. Now when they're faced to have to balance and fight against all of that resistance, it's easy to crumble and fall. Will Leon Edwards crumble? Or will he be able to keep his balance and stay on top of the mountain? Now that we've gotten the concerns, it's time to get into who's actually going to win this fight. Breaking down this fight. How can each fighter win this fight? Well, if you're Leon Edwards as the champion, like I said before, you are, or rather you have the tools. You have the key. Of anything else, you have the key to win, which is knock him out again with a head kick. A definitive way to end it. You've done it before. It's possible you can set it up and do it again. Possible. Or you can win it all by staying on the feet. The one thing that you cannot do if you're Leon Edwards is get grappled and get put on the ground. Or even get put in the clinch. You can't do that against Kamaru Usman. Because as we've seen in the past, you get dominated. As a striker, Leon Edwards is a better striker than Kamaru Usman. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But overall, everything else, Usman is better than him. Everything else, Usman is better. Everything else, Usman is a better fighter. And so because of that, you've got to make sure that you keep Usman in the center of the ring so that he can't use the cage nor flip you on the cage. And so that you keep it in the mid-range and keep it where he's got to lunge into attack to get some openings. Then you're able to use your ability, kicks, precise striking, and using the middle of the ring to your advantage. That is the best way you're going to be able to win this fight. It would help if you can defend takedowns on a consistent basis and bring it back to the feet. That would help out a ton. But if you can't, you better open play that you're able to catch him again. Because that's, in my opinion, that's the only way that Edwards is going to be able to win this fight. It's the only way he's going to be able to win this fight. It's if he keeps it on the feet and doesn't allow for himself to get taken down. Because if he gets taken down, it's over. It's done. It's done. Just like its previous fights with Usman, it's done. There's no way that Leon Edwards can win this fight if it goes to a grapple competition. None whatsoever. And with Usman, make it a grappling competition. Don't look to outstrike Edwards. Don't look for a get back. Don't look to try to prove something. Do what John Jones did. John Jones didn't waste any time. John Jones didn't waste any time trying to go and show I'm a better striker than Cyril Gane. He went straight for, you got a weakness, I'm going to take it. Went straight for the grappler. And Usman, you did that in your first two fights against Edwards. You went for grappling. You went for the takedowns. You went and made it a physical affair. Use your wrestling. And Edwards' lack of defense to your advantage. It wasn't until you got complacent and didn't push the issue even when you were winning that you got knocked out. If he had committed to keep on grappling in the second fight, he would have won. It would have gone to the scorecards. Another unanimous decision. Usman still retains, still reigns. And now we're looking for the next challenger. That's what would have happened. But because you were content with getting in the center of the ring and lulling out the fight, well, again, you were dominant. You couldn't close the show. Couldn't close the show. And one thing that I've said, and me and TM both said when we were on this show talking about Kamaru Usman, is the fact that Usman does not have a definitive finishing blow. He's great at everything. He doesn't have one thing that he can go to and be like, yep, I got you. I got you. John Jones is wrestling and submissions. And on the feet, it's elbows. Those are his go-to. Rampage Jackson back in the day, it was the overhand right or hook. He had that as a go-to. It's a definitive way that you can look to end the fight. Islam Makhachev, for the majority of his career, has been submission specialist. Anderson Silva, it was countering you, lulling you into a false sense of security, and then catching you with precise punches and finishing you off to knock you out. All these fighters had one definitive thing that they could use to end the fight. whether when an opponent was hurt or when all else failed. Francis Ngannou, when it was the trio of African champions, Ngannou, Adesanya, and Usman, Ngannou, when he was in the UFC, it was just his raw power and knockout ability. If he lands one clean shot, everything's done. Each of these fighters had a calling card. What is Usman's calling card? And it needs to be for this fight grappling, wrestling, specifically wrestling and ground and pound. That's what he needs to do to end this fight. That's what's going to win him this fight. And that should be his calling card for the rest of his career. Get your opponent on the ground and just wail away. That should be his definitive way to finish off opponents. To end them. End them. Use your elite and superior physical ability, strength, explosiveness, and stamina. Wear your opponent down, wrestle them to the ground, and then end it with strikes in a full mount position, or when you have their back and you clubbing blows to the side of the head, whatever you want to do. That should be Usman's calling card to end fights. And to ensure that what happened in that last fight, the miracle KO, doesn't happen again. He does that, he wins. He doesn't do that, he leaves the door open. If he leaves the door open, we can see a repeat of what we saw with Leon Edwards. Because it's as outmatched in terms of overall ability that Leon Edwards is in terms of having a disadvantage against Usman. He is a better striker. And if you make this so that he has an opportunity to put this fight back on the feet to win, we can see a recap of what we can see a part 2 of what we saw in their second clash. And another viral knockout at any given point in time. Because all it takes is one mistake. We now know all it takes is one mistake. And Usman can get caught and put away. Edwards has that ability. It's up to Usman to make sure that doesn't happen at all. By any means necessary, you take this fight to the ground and you keep it there. Don't change for nothing. And you end it with ground and pound on the ground. And that's who I have winning this fight. For my prediction, I have Usman winning this fight by ground and pound in the third round. He doesn't let it go to 5. I would not be surprised if he went and ended it in the second round. Just immediately wore him down in the first round, second round, go and take him out. Would not be surprised at all. Would not be surprised at all. That's what I see happening. Because I don't think Usman's going to let what happened in the first fight happen again. There's no need to wrestle and just wrestle when you can wrestle and take somebody out. You were winning. Don't get it twisted if you're in terms of Usman. He was winning. But he didn't close the show. He's got to close the show to ensure that a knockout is not a possibility. He does that. Usman, third round, ground and pound TKO. That's the way I got winning this fight. That's what I'm expecting this fight to be come tomorrow. Oh, it's going to be a hotly contested affair. Don't get it twisted. But it doesn't have to be. If Usman does the right thing and dominates from the jump, not wasting time, turn this into a wrestling match, get on the ground and ground and pound Edwards and beat him up and get him out of there. Because you were able to do that in the first 2 fights. You just could not close the show. Again, unanimous decision in the first win. Would have gone to a unanimous decision again in the second one. Yes, Usman has the power to knock out Edwards. He does. Like we saw against Jorge Masvidal. An incredible right hand. We know he's got the power to knock him out. On the feet if he catches him, of course. Problem is, though, this is too dangerous for Usman to take that route. Get on the inside, clinch him up, take him down, ground and pound, wear him down with wrestling, get a bunch of ground control, get his stamina low, ground and pound him once you get full mount. That's what should happen. That's what ought to happen. That's what can happen. Because Usman's got that ability. But he's got to commit to saying, I'm finishing the fight. He's got to commit to that. Bullying isn't going to be enough. Because bullying, while it can be enough, has you in this situation now where you're the challenger and not the champion. That's what bullying got you. Because you couldn't close the show with as dominant of a performance. You made one mistake that let him steal a win in your eyes if you're Kamaru Usman. Can't let that happen again. Usman, third round, TKO, ground and pound, and he commits to grappling the entirety of the fight. Doesn't even entertain trying to strike with Leon Edwards. Doesn't let the fear of another headshot dissuade him from doing what he does best. That's what I see happening with this fight. If he doesn't do that, he's cheating himself. But if he does, and new UFC welterweight champion of the world, Kamaru Usman. That's how I see this fight going. I can't wait for Saturday night because we're going to see what happens with that. And it's going to be an incredibly exciting fight to see. So, this has been another episode of the Watch Report. Shorter than usual, I know. But hey, we got stuff to do. And don't worry, we're going to go back to our normally scheduled program. We got a bunch of stuff to cover still in the world of sports, like with the NFL. Bunch of signings. We're going to cover all of that. NBA playoffs happening. Bunch of things going on. Brackets moving left, right, and center. Whereas the boxing world, my goodness, we got fights left, right, and center coming down the pot that we are going to cover and talk about. Keep it locked right here. I've been John Luke Wells. This has been the Watch Report. Peace and love. We are out of here.